Welcome to the BioeconomyVentures CEO Discussions, the podcast sessions where we explore the remarkable journey of visionary leaders who have not only launched but also scaled their bioeconomy startups to unprecedented heights. In our episodes, we invite successful entrepreneurs to share their unique experiences and valuable insights, offering a glimpse into the dynamic world of bioeconomy innovation. The bioeconomy, which is a rapidly evolving field, holds the promise of sustainable solutions to some of our planet's most pressing challenges, such as climate change and even resource scarcity. It takes extraordinary vision, resilience, and even strategic thinking to navigate this complex landscape successfully. Our podcast is dedicated to unraveling the secrets behind achievement, with the belief that wisdom and experience have the power to inspire and guide emerging entrepreneurs into their path of success. My name is Olivera Stojilović Trivunić. I am a project manager at Foodscale Hub and a partner of BioeconomyVentures project, a Horizon 2020 funded initiative that aims to build the reference platform for bioeconomy-based startups and spin-offs seeking to gain access to finance, thus becoming the main meeting point in the European bioeconomy. With me today is Stefaan De Wildeman, who, inspired by increasing dynamics, challenges, and opportunities in the plastic industry, founded B4Plastics, a company with a radical eco-plastics vision and a world-new product portfolio. B4Plastics is on a mission: awake our world from its fossil demands and medieval plastic behaviors and guide it into a more enjoyable and sustainable material future. Hi, Stefaan, and welcome to our podcast session today.
Hi, Olivera.
It's great to have you here. So for our listeners today, could you tell us a little bit more about B4Plastics, its vision, how you came about, and what actually are you aspiring to do?
Okay, yes, for sure. B4Plastics is a young European company. It's founded in Flanders, Belgium. And I think it was born more years ago than officially detectable, because I was playing a lot with the thought, how can I use my education and experience and fun in chemistry and biochemistry and then more and more materials to link it to big questions this world is confronted with. And the two worlds found each other in a slowly growing and maturing way, which has led to founding B4Plastics and then to become fully operational and to become fully dedicated to it. And if you ask for the vision of the company, it is about substituting a lot of our polymeric or plastic materials, which originate from mid-last century. And when they were created, the word sustainability was hardly existing and certainly not executed and not planned. So those materials, which are making more than 90% of all the materials that are here surrounding us today, still originate from the mid-century of, the mid-last century. And it's a bit strange because the conditions have changed on planet Earth considerably. We are with fourfold more people around. We use a manifold of the volume of the materials, and we just are touching on borderlines, on limits. And it's time, and actually it's late, to revisit the whole way and the whole behavior and the whole industry, how we make and how we deal with our materials. And since I have been accumulating a lot of ideas, and since I have been seeing that those ideas can be converted in prototypes and that they can be the beginning of a new industry branch, let's say, being convinced about it and having demonstrated it, meanwhile in the young company B4Plastics, which is only 5 years operational, it gives some power and some incentive and some inspiration to go on. Because there's a lot of materials that we can make and use in a much more sustainable way than we do today.
Great, Stefaan. Thank you for a really detailed introduction and your vision, and it really sets the pace for our podcast discussion. And you touched upon something very, very interesting, with people I think often don't really focus that much on, and that's previous experiences. And you say that your previous background and your interest in chemistry really started that's brain bubble, let's say, that idea circulating around. And what would you then say to young entrepreneurs So does experience matter, and does your background, like personal background, really help in shaping your business idea?
Well, your question is a little bit sector dependent, industry dependent. And my answer for the chemical and the materials industry is that from my experience, if you have some experience there in a quite protected environment where you can learn how the chemical and the materials industry is working, please take that opportunity, because this is an industry that is very mature, that is originating from the last century, as I said, which has its habits, its rules, and I would say even age will help you a little bit if you are a bit older to make your point in this industry, because coming in there as a youngster and think that you will turn everything upside down, it might have a naive character somehow. I don't say that it's not doable, but I would advise to take a bit of learning time to just learn how this world is working. I'm of course speaking for the chemical and the materials industry, which is also an asset heavy industry. I mean, it's not electrons flying around like founding a Facebook or something. It's a totally different industry. So you have to accommodate, you have to learn it.
Perfect. Right. Experience is very important for backgrounds and for developing character and for actually using that experience, right, to generate those ideas and being actually sure that the idea that you're developing is the direction that you want to go. So when you mention experience, so in your experience in the company and your experience as let's say a mature business professional, what are the most significant obstacles that you actually encountered during the scale-up process? And how did you successfully navigate them? So it's one thing to, right, encounter the barriers, but success and of course then the growth of a business is how we overcome them.
Yeah, well, if I can go to the DNA of B4 Plastics, and this is a real bootstrapping story. It means you start from nothing, just from ideas, and you try to convert them into a business, and you have a growth scenario based on them. It means you first of all need a very strange balance between being patient enough, because bootstrapping in the beginning, it's like planting a young tree in the garden. The first months and the first year, you hardly see it changing, and you should be able to tolerate that. And that's the patient part. And at the same time, I remember very well that I was very restless and impatient, because it was as if I knew what would come already, and that I had to start working. Or if I can talk again in the terms of a tree, a young tree, I realized that I should suck out a lot of liquid from the earth to be able to grow, and that you don't have a lot of muscles as a young tree, so to say.
True, you start as a little seedling.
So you have to spend all your attention to sucking that fluid from earth because you need it, and it brings you in the next position. And I remember that subtle balance between being aware of patience and being feeling restless at the same time. I remember it very well.
Perfect. And right, that's a really good analogy. Sometimes when we plant something, it doesn't really sprout in one day. It sprouts over years, it sprouts over months, and we have to cultivate it. If we just abandon it, the idea goes with it as well. So in that restlessness, in that balance, in that scaling up, right, in that growth, can you maybe elaborate on the role that your team played? So your team probably helped you grow and probably was part of that planting and that scaling up, right? But what explicit roles did it play in overcoming maybe those challenges, growing? So how did you pick your team? So how did you pick the people around you, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's a personal saying, but the HR, the human resource aspect of growing a team, is also a competence as such, and that's of course not a secret. I think many people know that. Mm-hmm. You have to believe the whole big tree that this company might become, and other people have to believe it with you, and you have to believe it together. And I can also remember, and I have a lot of anecdotes where it comes very close, so to say, if people can do the right actions at the right time to help the company going forward or not. And that's the simple thing, like having the right colleague on the right place at the right time is so important in the beginning of the company, because you hardly have money to spend, at least if you follow the bootstrapping roadmap. So it comes very close, but apparently if you have more moments where everything fits together, you make progress, and that's the way how the employee team is growing. and of course, I have been writing down two pitfalls for startups in general, and that's the word late comes twice. And one of them is that if you are aware too late that you have not the right people at the right place, you are in a dangerous situation. You can just not sustain such a situation. You have to get rid of it. And there is, of course, a very unpleasant thing about it, that the moment you would realize that you have to take action, and of course, the better you can pre-filter the whole team composition, the less you're confronted with it. But I can say in the last 25 people now, well, we are with 25 people, that there is a few moments where you realize that the right people are not on the right place. And you have to realize that, and you have to take action.
So what are some examples or suggestions that you can share with our listeners? How do they spot that? What is a trigger? How do you see that people don't fit in their roles? How do you see that some person might fit better in a different department or with a different vision or a different strategy?
Yeah, well, first of all, in a startup, the HR vision or the drivers for the people in a startup are quite different than in a corporate. You have to be a creator. You have to be a problem solver to an extreme level, where in corporate situations, you should have much better political sense and much more big team insights and so on. There are different positive aspects of a personality that weigh more in a startup or a corporate. So in a startup, it's about taking risk. It's about liking the adventure. It's about calculating in that things could go wrong, but it's also about co-ownership, about accountability, about having the feeling that if you're successful, it's also because of yourself, because you were part of that whole team. And that goes to extreme levels. And that means that you have a certain, I will not exaggerate, but you have a certain profile distinction between people that feel very happy in a startup versus people that feel very happy in a corporate. I don't say, of course, that you have not personalities that can glide from the one world into the other, but there is a difference in what is expected from you and how you behave. And well, it's all about balances. If you need a certain for instance, academic drive in the company. If you're like we are a European deep tech company, you need to go a bit deep tech, of course. And that means that in our case, in the materials world, chemical world, you are very closely connected to academic cooperations, or even we have PhDs on our own payroll. But if you have too many of those forces together, you are going into the other pitfall of a startup, and that's also a sentence with the word late in it, and that's you go into the risk zone of converting too late and to accumulate too many insights and too much and too deep technology without converting it into value for customers and your environment. So it's a balance. If you have people that, for instance, would behave too academic for too long, and are not behaving for instance, a project flow when it's expected to do so, you are again in that risk zone where you say you are not behaving in the right way to help us forward.
Exactly. So it's having diversity, but having a common goal, right? Understanding that you need different views, to build an idea, but you all need to be on the same page, right? You have to share that value that you are in a business, you are in a startup, not in a corporate where you have different, let's say, structural operations, right? You have to be different in that sense. And now that we're touching upon like the shared vision, what was the first perceptions that you encountered within the work that you do?
Yeah, very chaotic. And that means that in different minds, there are different perceptions. And it also means that we have to, what it all means, how it is affecting their lives, and what is good and bad about plastics. And there is a lot of explanation that we should give to show a bit the way, I would say. We start here to talk about an academy that you really need in our position, to be able to translate all the perceptions and in and outs of the whole plastic industry and what it means for people's life. So my first answer to your question is chaotic, sorry. And that means that the world has a way to go. The world is a bit underdeveloped. We have been buying materials in our lives, in cars, in clothing, in furniture, in houses, without really paying attention to where they were coming from and where they would go to. And that should change. Otherwise, we cannot continue like this. We should be able to give plastics, let's say, a life in our lives or so, and to be able to choose them in a responsible way and to handle them in a responsible way.
Perfect. And what was very interesting that you mentioned is that chaotic perspective. So do you think that your public presence, right, being present in engagements such as this, speaking about your solution, getting people involved, getting people informed, and even the academy that you mentioned, do you think that that plays a very crucial role in your business, let's say, presence and positive attributes?
Yes, I believe it plays a very important role. It's much more important than talking about a price level of a material, for instance. Of course, this remains part of the game, but if people start to connect a certain type of plastic with their own future or the future of their children, that's where the emotion kicks in, and that's where price is partially overruled by, hey, what am I doing and what can I do and what can I contribute to this world? And we all know that the purpose drive, especially in young people, younger generations, it's skyrocketing. It's the way we want to live our lives, to have the feeling that we can contribute something and that we do it in a sustainable way. That if the thing is damaged, that we could maybe postpone the damage or even prevent it.
Right, or even be the solution to it. Really important,
yes.
Really important. And you mentioned prices. And of course, when we have businesses, when we have something that we create, we talk about prices. And my question for you, and of course for our listeners to know, is what maybe aspects of your business played a crucial role in generating revenue, right? Revenue is important, and when we have a business, right, we need to know that we can sustain it.
Yeah. Well, I think the deep tech capabilities of the company, which is, in short, polymer architecture competence. That means that we are behaving like an architect designing a house to your own desire. So we are designing a plastic to your own desire. And then you, in this case, it's often big brands that have ideas and ambitions to go in a much more sustainable way to their end consumers, to their own customers. And so we design or we architect the polymer that fulfills the requirements, that can bring them really to the next level in sustainability and might make them unique in their own market doing so. And from that competence, it's not so difficult to have an emotion on top. I would say a value pricing, like, what is this worth? If I can choose my own plastic, whoa. Let's then choose one, and you start to get lost from the from the normal conditions of the plastics industry, where everything can be sold, or not everything, not the plastic architected materials then, but all the standard grades can be sold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a bit more euro per kilogram. You're gone from that perspective, because you start all over from scratch and you have a big dream in mind.
Perfect.
And that has been our business model. That first of all, if we have dreamed the dream with our customers, we have made it in a sample that is a realistic sample. So we have fulfilled the dream and we have generated revenues by it. And then if you have a good sample in hand, the way is open to upscale it and then to go into bigger business, into first supply and licensing and so on. So that has been our model so far.
So I'm assuming now that you mentioned having something to touch, having something tangible, played a really crucial role in securing, right, the initial funding and initial partnerships and initial, let's say, bootstraps and then that initial jump. So what role then did partnership and collaboration play in your successful strategies? So you mentioned that it is having something, right, to physically present to people, having that dream in your hands, but what other roles did partnership and collaboration play?
Well, I have to answer here from a soft skills set of elements.
Yes, of course.
Because my experience is, of course, you have contracts and you have them and you install them. But I think the real thing is happening and has been happening in the last 5 years by approaching people, and they really feel it. If you're convinced that you are there, of course, to help them, but then also for the bigger thing, which is 1 or 2 levels above it. It's actually 2 or 3 levels above it. It's to save this planet. And you are just here sitting at the same table because you might have an opportunity to start and to contribute in that direction. And if that feeling is there, you are much more in the soft elements, and you start to look at each other like, hey, we have a kind of a vision together. We are complementary to each other. We can help each other and so on. And that's in the soft way that you find each other. And if you then promise and you also fulfill the promise and you go into the partnership, that's the way to grow up together. And that's what we have at this moment, more than 100 active and paying partnerships now in the last 5 years. So my computer is still only like 1 centimeter thickness, but it's full with all kinds of NDAs and trustful emails where you are partnering with each other.
Congratulations, that's a very, very big success. And you mentioned now, right, the necessary, let's say, stepping stones for a business, right, is the funding. So how did you find, or how did you secure funding? What were your routes? What were your, let's say, directions that you took in order to get where you are right now? And you mentioned soft skills, so I'm going to restate it for our listeners that soft skills play a very important role when you are planning to start a business and planning to go on your venture. But what other things that you uncovered?
Okay, I have the impression I have one-word answers this afternoon. So here my answer.
That's good. You are to the case, to the point.
Yeah. So here my answer is leverage. And that means if you are sitting around a table with a potential customer and they see the dream and the first euro starts to flow, they want to support. They want to let us do a first polymer architecture design and they want to spend the first euro on it. But there is a big challenge in doing so. So you need maybe a second person or so on top who does extra research to have sufficient insights to bring a first sample to such a potential customer. You start to use that first euro that is moving. You start to use it to initiate subsidy projects around the topic. So you find sweet spots in the market where the first money starts to flow as a startup, and you organize, you create, you shape granted projects around it that can feed it with the technology that is needed. And then when the banks then see that you are moving a euro and that there is funding for fulfilling the promise with that customer, the banks also start to put in some euros, which you might have. You might give them in return, of course. That means they could give you loans or convertible loans or anything. And that's why I say leverage. You have detected a sweet spot in the markets where something starts to move, where the commitment is high enough that some cash is moving. You make that hard. You promise with your two eyes straight into each other's eyes, and you fulfill that promise. And then when the funding and the banks come to it, you start to generate a bunch of technology and money, and you start to generate revenue in general. Where, of course, if the innovation is growing up, this €1 is becoming 10 and €100, and that should be the cash driving element in the whole story, of course, in the end. And that's why funding will fade away. But my answer is, for a startup, how to start, and that's what I tried to explain in the last minute.
And you did a really, really good job. So important is to know your market, know what you're doing, and know how you're communicating what you're doing, right? That leverage is where you're going to enter to a direction that you want to achieve. So that's really good. And as a founder, as a director currently, right, you have to make some tough decisions. So how did you prioritize and make those decisions? Did you lean on your team that we touched upon a little bit? Did you lean on yourself? Did you lean on your experiences? So how does a person, an entrepreneur, prepare to make those strategic decisions in business, and how do you prioritize them?
Mm-hmm. I start with a behavior answer. I think if people around you see that you are completely committed to what you do and what you want to achieve, it reflects on them, and it gives you a kind of credibility which you need from the team in the beginning. So first of all, you should lead by example, I think, and that's a behavior answer. If you then work hard, also you have to prioritize a little bit less, but that's a completely wrong answer, of course. So now I try to go in the right way. You have to be aware of what you can contribute and what you are good at, and you have to shape borderlines for it somehow. I refer to the Greek saying, know yourself. And if you feel that you have talents as a group, and that you have achievements which are quite good at not so big effort, that means that you're talented for it and you have the right competence on that sweet spot. And it means that you should dare to say no to things that start to be too far off.
Right, daring to say no, right? We need to know what options are for us, what leads us in the direction that we want to achieve, and what options lead us away, right? It's very important to know our vision and our mission clearly. And oftentimes entrepreneurs get deluded in that moment of trying to achieve the dream, that they jump for every opportunity that arises, right? They don't really stay true to themselves. And of course, being true is what keeps you apart from people, right? There's so many ideas, so many businesses, so many people are trying to do amazing things, but you have to be specific and unique, right? You have to be true to yourself. So these are all very good discussions, and I think our listeners are going to really enjoy the expertise that you bring. And let's say a closing question, or our most impactful one, is what valuable advice would you offer to fellow bioeconomy startups, right? Fellow entrepreneurs aiming to scale up their business, aiming to sit in your chair, well, not physically in your chair, right? We're not taking away your business, but sit in situations that you found yourself, be in positions that you are now, right? Live that dream, live that vision. So what advice would you give them?
Yeah, well, a few advices that they might have heard before is that you should have an endurance, you should have a patience, you should have a belief, and that means that the combination of those, maybe with enough energy, you can run through walls normally if you have a good combination of those, and you can sustain for an extremely long and admirable time, and it's because you are inspired and you are using a set of very known competences that successful entrepreneurs seem to combine somehow. But then in my personal life, I'm even inspired above that, and sometimes I have the impression that I am here with a mission, and that there is something that is even leading me. We have no time at the end of this conversation to do very strange about it, and I cannot make it hard. But I mean, I even experience a level above just being patient and being energetic and being a believer. I might not be surprised that there is something that we also don't know, and that there is something that is maybe we are here to simply do it also. I don't know if that's such a good guidance for everybody, because that goes in a very personal way. But I like it to put it even in a mysterious way, and that I don't understand all ins and outs of what is happening here. I'm sometimes feeling like an instrument, and I like to be it and let it happen. The vision is big enough to consider it like this.
Exactly. And I think that's very important for listeners to understand, that sometimes you might be in the wrong place, and following your instinct and following something maybe even greater or bigger than yourself, listening to those internal voices, listening to people around you, sometimes can even guide you in the right direction, right? And sometimes we listen in the wrong one and end up in places that we don't want to be. But if we are true to ourselves, if we follow that little niche that only we can do, we can actually achieve those visions that we dream of. So thank you for joining us, Stefaan, and thank you to our dear listeners for following along as we dive deep into the stories, strategies, and lessons learned from our brilliant bioeconomy leaders, unraveling the inspiration and knowledge that have fueled their remarkable journeys. We hope that the vision and experiences shared by our extraordinary guests have left you inspired and equipped with valuable insights. As you continue your own entrepreneurial endeavors, remember to stay motivated, keep innovating, and together, let's shape a more sustainable and prosperous future. Until next time, this is Olivera signing off for BioeconomyVentures CEO Discussions.